Hey, this is Blake Techmeyer from GreatSense.org, and I'm here to bring you episode 3 of Creator's Q. Today we're going to be looking at Adobe Illustrator, and we're going to be talking about some different families of tools that you're going to find on the tool board. Now, to recap real quick, episode 1, we talked about what is Adobe Illustrator, and we talked about some of the tools in there and how to zoom in and zoom out, pretty basic in looking at shapes. Then in episode 2, we jumped into talking about the magic wand, multiple select, and then we looked at the pen tool and the curvature tool and just the awesome things you can do with that. So as we jump into episode 3, we're going to take and we're going to look at the shaper tool family, shaper tool, pencil, smooth tool, path eraser, joint tool. We're going to look at the eraser family, eraser tool, scissor tool, knife tool. We're going to look at the rotate and reflect tool, scale, shear, and reshape tool. And then underneath the width tool, we're going to look at some of these wild tools they give you for editing shapes. So let's jump in first, and we're going to look at the shaper tool. Shaper tool is an amazing part of this program that they've created, where all you have to do is take and make gestures to create shapes. So for example, let's make a mountaintop. All I have to do is draw in the shape of a triangle, even if it's wobbly, and it'll make that shape. Now let's give our mountain a peek here. Now one thing you're going to see here is, oh no, we have this shape overlapping this other shape. Well, one of the beautiful things with this is if you take and you scribble down into here, it will delete the outside of that box and it will leave it so you have this top part here. Now, one thing that you can also do is, let's say we want to make another little mountain in the background and you want to get rid of this line between the two shapes and make them one. If you do that, it will delete the line and create one shape. Now, let's make ourselves a moon. Okay, so we come over here, scribble into this, and scribble into that. Voila, we have our different shapes. Now, one thing that's really cool too here with the reshaper tool is if you click on here, and let's say we want to go into this in more depth, and we don't like where this, we want to change up the shape of the moon. Let's say we give it a little more of a sharpness to it. We can adjust and move things around. The beauty of the shaper tool is editability. You can go back and you can edit it a ton of times in a lot of different ways. So that's kind of our start there. If you remember with your properties, you can come over here to fill things and change them up. Let's say we want to change that to a different color. Let's change that to white, like a snowy top. Let's change these shapes and let's make them more like a dark gray. And there we go. So that's the shaper tool, pretty basic. Now the next tool we're going to look at here is the pencil tool. Now if you have used Adobe Photoshop, you're going to notice that you have a lot of brush tools and pencil tools, and the way that they work is you're going to draw on the image and then it's going to be a part of that layer. Different in Adobe Illustrator. In Adobe Illustrator, when you use a pencil tool or a brush, it doesn't just do that. It creates a shape out of what you draw. Now, those are kind of messy. Let's go back in and let's draw a for real shape. So let's say I make kind of a weird bean-like shape. So there's that. Let's add the strokes. Let's fill it up. Let's give it a good green bean look to it. So there we go. We got a green bean. And then let's make another shape here with the pencil tool. And we're going to make a tic-tac-toe board. Now there's several things you can also do with the pencil tool that are really amazing. You can always come back in here and you can change even what you use for your stroke. So let's say instead I want to use a rough looking pattern here. I can do that. And I'm noticing that it's kind of got like gray to it. Let's see if I can change that to black real quick. Drag it down here, black. It works. So on there, I can always change this back, and let's go back to the basic. And I got my little tiny lines here. And I'm going to add to the stroke a little bit. I like it a little thicker. So that's the pencil tool. It's a great tool for drawing lines, making things. And so one thing that I've come to find with Adobe Illustrator is it's not just a line, but it's a path. When you're drawing something, it's going to make it its own little shape in a way. Now, the next thing we're going to take a look at here is the smooth tool. Now, I don't have a lot of great examples here for the smooth tool, but you can take and use it to take and smooth out shapes. If you have a really rough, let's say we come over here and we draw something in like this and it's got some roughness to it. You can come back in with the smooth tool and you can draw on the edge there, and slowly, after doing it several times, it will take out some of that roughness in your picture and make it look a lot nicer. And let's see here, if I select there and I grab that, I can kind of adjust that and make that look nicer. Now that is the important thing, is you do have to select the item in order for that smoother tool to work. Let's try it on here. We could take and use it to kind of smooth out that line. So smoother tool is great for taking out some of those blemishes. Next we have the path eraser tool. I will just say the path eraser tool is a little bit of a mystery to me, but one thing I've come to find is you can take and you go from anchor points and draw across and it will cut off those pieces. Now when you start to try and do that for multiple anchor points, it gets a little complicated. So, but that's kind of the basic idea there with that one, is you're able to cut across in a certain way using the path eraser tool. And as we get to the eraser tools, actually, they're much better for those options. And let's do the joint tool. Now this one was really surprising to me. What you can do here is, let's say I want to turn my tic-tac-toe into a box. I come over here and let's select my tic-tac-toe, and I take my joint tool and I come across here. It will take and delete. It will take and you got to make sure, because sometimes it'll click off when you do that. You can take and it will make a joint there in the middle and cut off the excess for you. As well as, let me finish this up showing this for you. Come there, and we got ourselves kind of a cool looking square. I really like that. So we'll put it up on the mountaintop. Almost looks like a window. Let's say I'm drawing also with the pen tool again, and I've only got a shape like this. It's not quite connected. Let's see if I use the joint tool. It will take and bring those together, and so it helps make your shape complete. All right, so first off, that is our shaper tool family. Let's look at the eraser tool. Now the eraser tool is very interesting. One thing I want to say real quick, just kind of a shout out. My uncle, Mr. Baronic, was my art teacher in high school, and I really give a lot of credit to him for helping me to become the creative person I am today. And one thing I loved is in his art classes, he would really just give us a lot of freedom and opportunity to kind of explore whatever we wanted to do with the art. And I love that because it really gave me a chance to just practice things and learn new things and just have a lot of fun. And one thing he'd say a lot of times too is happy accidents. And he would point out that even when making a piece of art, sometimes you make accidents and they're just as much a part of that piece of art as the things you mean to do. And so see accidents is not always a problem, but it's something you can work with and something that actually adds to the picture. And so let's look at the eraser tool. Now the first thing I want you to see is with the eraser tool, it's crazy. You'll start to cut through something and notice how all of a sudden it's created several different shapes. Now with the shaper tool, I'm going to delete this out of here. I'm going to use a little bit simpler shapes. Let's take and just do a round rectangle, fill it with pink, crazy pink color. And so with that, the eraser tool can take and you can just chop into it, and then all of a sudden you notice how it's changed that where that shape is cut out. Now this is still one shape, but if I come here and I cut all the way through, this is now two different shapes. Now the eraser tool is a great tool for that. There's several things to note about it. One, it's destructive. So when you are going to cut through, it is erasing material. We're going to come back to that later with the knife tool, and it's a little bit different in that way. But the eraser tool is just a great way to edit objects. And if you, let's say we do here, if I click on this part of the shape and I come back to the eraser tool and I come over here and I cut on here and then I come over this way, you're going to notice it only cuts out of the selected object. It does not cut out of things that are not cut. So if I want to though, and I click both of them, came back with the eraser tool and I cut it down the middle, all of a sudden now I have 4 objects. Eraser tool's awesome. Really like it. Scissor tool. How does the scissor tool work? Well, just like we'd seen before, let's select this with our multiple or direct selection tool, come with our scissor tool, and you can click on these different anchor points and you can actually cut out pieces. Now that's not working like I want it to. Let's use a different shape to kind of show us. Let's use a circle. So we come here, and if we take our scissor tool, we can cut on these different parts of this path, and all of a sudden, that part of the path, oops, let me grab it with, that part of the path is a different shape all by itself. And so the scissors, just like in real life, you're chopping things apart, and you can kind of cut them up. So let's do that, and just to kind of refresh our joint tool, let's bring that back together. All right, so next, the knife tool. Now, I really like the knife tool because unlike the eraser tool where it kind of just takes and cuts away from it, I can, let's say, I'll cut this shape like this here, and it cuts the shape in two, but it doesn't take away any of the material. So let's say I want to make this look a little bit lighter, and all of a sudden it almost looks like it gives it some dimension with the different shading. All right, so that's just the eraser tools. Let's get to the rotate. Now with the rotate tool, it's pretty simple in the same way. Let's get rid of this so it's not in the way. But with the rotate tool, I can grab on here and I can spin this object around. Now, depending on where I put the focal point will also change how it rotates. If you have any experience with Adobe products, it's not new to you. But notice this too. If you click on it and you want to have it centered out, double click on the rotate, and it will also give you this option that's a little more detailed, and you can even do a preview on there to see what it'll do. Let's next take a look at the other tool underneath there, and that's the reflect tool. Not too hard to imagine what that does. It flips the object depending on where you put that. Double click on here. You can change if it's going to be vertical or horizontal. You can change the angle at which it goes. Just a lot of options. So, simple enough. That's the reflect and the rotate tool. Let's look at this one, the scale tool. Now with the scale tool, it's going to give you the ability to grow shapes and make them different sizes. Now as you can see, I'm making it fat and wide or skinny and tall. If you don't like that, press shift, hold up here, hold it and press shift and drag, and then it will keep it sometimes in a better shape. Now you can also double click on it and it'll give you this chance to go into more detailed. Let's make it 30%, make it itty bitty. So that's the scale tool. Let's see if there's anything else on there. Pretty similar. Oh yeah, really small. Now let's go to the shear tool. What is the shear tool? So if you use the shear tool, it's going to be kind of a newer one for me, but in the same way, when you drag, it's going to take and shift it to a slant towards the direction you're pulling it. You can also double click on this one, and you can set the angle in which you want to set it. Oh my gosh. You can do vertical, horizontal. You can change the angles. Gives you a lot of options. Getting a little more in depth in there. That looks pretty cool. And let's change these colors just for fun. We're at it. I love the primary colors. I feel like you can never go wrong using primary colors. So, and I feel like green should be one of them, but I know it's not. And so there we go. So come back over here. Last one is the reshaper tool. Now I've spent quite a bit of time trying to watch different videos to kind of understand the reshaper tool better. And I'll be honest, it's a bit confusing at moments. It's working with you can access just certain points there, and when you do that, it helps you to kind of drag them around. I find the direct selection, this direct selection tool just a little more convenient in that way. All right, and so let's get to our last tools we're gonna look at. We're gonna look at the width tool. Now this one I saw on a video and I thought it was really helpful, so I'm gonna kind of show you. So let's make our shape again. Let's take out the fill, and let's take and click off here. We're gonna go back to our scissor tool, and we're gonna cut out just a little bit of it, and click off, drag sort here. And so what we have here is kind of like almost like a unfinished ring. Now with the width tool, let's zoom in here, and you can take and click on it, and you can change the width of those different items, and notice how it kind of changed different ring. Let's grab here and let's make it bigger. this is a really cool tool to change the width of different items. You can do some really neat things with it, and you can even change it up to kind of pull back out there. Underneath this family, you're going to find too, is there's a bunch of different shapes that are going to help you with different things. You got like the warp tool. You can kind of pull around, change things up. It looks kind of like a snake. And so this is going to work primarily with different shapes and the way that you can edit those shapes. So let's play with this little object that we made here. And we can warp it, drop it in there. A lot of these also kind of go back and forth. Here's the twirl tool, which I think is incredible. And so let's click on this one real quick because I think it'll look cool on there. We come to the twirl, and you can spin things around, and it looks amazing. So with that, the twirl tool is pretty self-explanatory. Kind of put a cool little spin on it. You got the pucker tool. Now the pucker tool is going to pull things together, and the bloat tool is going to push things apart. Now you got to be careful because the way it does it sometimes will be kind of funny. You got the scallop tool. This is going to take and pull in some weird shapes, kind of like a scallops. You get the crystallize tool, and with that one you can kind of spike out with crystals. And then you have the wrinkle tool that's going to kind of help wrinkle some shapes. So hey, that's our 5 families of tools we're really looking at today. Thanks for joining me. Please subscribe, and if you have any more questions or things you'd like to know more about, please leave it in the comments. Thank you so much. GreatSense.org.